Men have been steadily dropping out of the workforce, especially men aged 25 to 54, who are often considered to be in their prime working years. As of August 2024, 13.7% of prime-age men were not working, compared to just 7.2% in 1954.
I can already tell I'm going to say some things that a lot of you aren't going to like, but for reference, I am almost 40. I have 2 kids, and I'm married. I have a house. I am where a lot of young men are trying to get to. So as a disclaimer, my current situation is going to inform my opinion.
The long-term decline in labor force participation by so-called prime-age men is a tremendous worry for our society, for our economy, and probably also for our political system.
There's a surplus of prime-age workers who could be working and aren't. And that's this puzzling problem.
The unemployment rate for prime-age working men sat at 3.4% in August 2024.
Unemployment rate at this point is almost irrelevant. What's relevant is working versus non-working.
This number primarily includes those who are unemployed and looking for a job. But about 10.5% of men in their prime working years, or roughly 6.8 million men nationwide, are neither working nor looking for employment.
This is actually lower than I thought. I would have thought this would be at like 20%.
Compared to just 2.5% in 1954.
What's surprising is it's not a COVID phenomenon. It's not a recession phenomenon.
And for every prime-age man who is unemployed and looking for a job, there are more than 3, and some years 4, who are neither working nor looking for work.
So what's driving men out of the workforce? And if left unchecked, what impact will it have on the U.S. economy?
I'm going to make a quick guess here before we get into this, but I think that the price of things, especially homes, the price of college, the price of groceries, look, the reality is, as soon as the education department was started, and they started guaranteeing student loans, the price of education went up. The government also has programs that help with first-time home buying, which only increases the housing costs. And finally, because student loans increased the tuition rates, the same is true with everything in the economy because access to credit cards has allowed people to spend more, and thus the price can continue to go up. Do you think that the iPhone is $1,200 in countries where they don't have access to credit? No, the iPhones are $1,200, $1,500 because you can get on a payment plan and pay $100 a month for it. That's the reason that things are expensive. Right now, we have the highest credit card balances in the history of the United States right now. Hey, real quick, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do that. I really appreciate it. And if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. Let's keep going.
Nearly half of prime-age men out of the workforce cited obsolete skills, lack of education and training, poor work record, or security issues as a reason preventing them from work.
Education is a very important predictor of a prime-age man's odds of being out of the labor force.
The big impacts are on the non-college educated groups on their ability to enter and stay in the labor market.
Men who are not college educated leave the workforce at higher rates than men who are.
I guarantee you this is correlation. People who are more motivated will stay in college longer. People who have more drive will go to college to begin with. And so this is a selection bias that's happening here. People who don't have very much drive or much motivation, of course they're not going to be working as much. Of course they didn't go to college.
At the same time, fewer younger men have been enrolling in college over the past decade.
If you look at the geography of where the most prime-age men out of the labor force are in particular, they tend to be in places that have experienced manufacturing declines. They used to graduate with a high school education and have good, stable jobs. They weren't glamorous.
There's been a consolidation of companies, and when you consolidate companies and they become larger, then they have the ability to manufacture out of the country. Do you think small local businesses are getting all of their stuff from overseas and all of their services from overseas? No, it doesn't make sense. If you're making, like, let's say, like duct cleaning equipment or something, like, and you have a patent on it, and you're just a small local business, and I choose this example because I know of a company who's doing this. If you're making a specialized product and you're a small business, you're just going to manufacture it here in the US. Now, once you start producing millions of products and you have a whole you have 100 different SKUs, that's when you start looking to manufacture out of the country. But this is, again, the issue with corporations and companies just growing infinitely, and why it's not going to be a problem that's fixed by the free market. It's only going to get worse.
Jobs, there were, automobile factories, sometimes mines, other manufacturing jobs, but they were respected, they were stable, and they could support a family. Since then, due to technology-driven growth, a little bit due to Chinese competition, you've had a lot of manufacturing firms and the places where they were located that were one-horse towns become ghost lands, right?
I really hope they touch on the fact that you had one gender that entered the workforce and created a ton of competition. You can argue whether that's good or bad. I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is that more workers came into industry and therefore put pressure on wages. It's the same thing that we say about all this immigration. Some people like the immigration if they're business owners and manufacturers. Yeah, sure, let them in so we can hire them at a cheaper rate. You think Tyson Foods is against immigration? Do you think that corporations aren't going to promote women coming into the workforce and basically doubling the workforce? Do you think that they love the fact that the mother will have to work overtime to pay for the child care that she now has to pay for, because now her and her husband are competing for the same job? Again, I'm not placing a value judgment. I'm merely saying that this is what happened.
Wages could also be a contributing factor. Median annual wages for men with a high school diploma have fallen from just over $57,600 in 1973 to $45,000 in 2023, adjusted for inflation. At the same time, wages for those with a bachelor's degree or more have increased by about $6,300 during the same period. This decline in earnings led to a 44% growth in the exit rate of men without a college degree from the workforce between 1980 and 2019.
I think, honestly, status plays more of a role than wages. As I said before, you had a manufacturing job, it was respected, you were part of a community, breadwinner for your family, you had organizations like unions or Rotary clubs that surrounded your job, and that's gone.
In general, men without children are also less likely to participate in the workforce compared to men with children, especially men without education or training after high school.
This is the number one reason that men aren't motivated to stay working. If you don't have responsibilities and you're just taking care of yourself, what's motivating you to become the manager where you're working? If you're just covering your bills and you're fine, there's nothing to look forward to in the future, you don't have your kids' dental bills to pay for, you don't have their health insurance to pay for, you might say, oh, well, I don't want to be a slave to people. But the truth is, 95% or more of men, this is what they want. They want people to rely on them. There's a lot of talk online about MGTOW, men going their own way, but they're just loud. The majority of men want to take care of people. They want to take care of a family. They want to raise kids. They want a wife that relies on them. But if they can't take care of them because the wages aren't there, then they feel trapped. Of course, if they feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, if they feel like they can't provide, the only thing worse than not having someone to provide for is having someone and not being able to provide for them. That's the biggest fear that men have.
Seen is a huge rise in the proportion of prime-age men who've never been married, and a very, very significant decline in the proportion who are currently married and have kids at home. And those two trends track closely with the big changes that we've seen about male attachment in the labor force. Correlation isn't always causation, but looking at that correspondence is real important, I think.
Meanwhile, 57% of the roughly 10% of men not looking for work said their physical or mental health was the main reason for not being employed, with 55% citing a disability, serious illness, and/or receiving disability benefits.
The whole question about the health and the mental health of male workforce dropouts is an extremely important and I think concerning one. Distressing proportion of the men who are out of the workforce say they're using pain medications every day.
A 2017 research paper estimates that an increase in opioid prescription between 1999 to 2015 led to about 43% of the decline in men's labor force participation rate during that period.
Every politician is invested in the market. They all make money off of these drug companies. We have horrible incentives in this country. Politicians, they own shares in the insurance companies. This is why they have no interest of getting rid of the health insurance industry. They're all reaping massive benefits from it. Politicians and their family shouldn't be allowed to own individual stocks. They should be allowed to own a total market index fund. That's it. These problems aren't going to go away until the lawmakers' incentives change.
Then you have to ask, what sort of pain are we talking about? Are we talking about physical pain? Are we talking about metaphysical pain? There's an enormous amount of depression, mental health challenges that men in this grouping face. Some of this is a chicken and egg question. Did you drop out because you were feeling sad, or are you sad because you dropped out and you're living on the couch?
Unemployment is really terrible for people's well-being. Often people adapt to all kinds of negative shocks, losing a kid, being widowed, whatever, and eventually kind of come back. But long-term unemployment is one of the worst things in terms of that. So what you have is a kind of scarring effect, and it's worse for men because their identity is much more wrapped up in their role as a worker.
Men's declining workforce participation could potentially leave a lasting impact on the American economy.
It means slower growth of the economy, obviously. It means bigger wealth gaps within our society.
It certainly will have an impact on our productivity, and probably already is.
The U.S. has been experiencing a severe shortage in labor.
That's because labor doesn't have as much value as ownership. And pretty much everything's owned by the boomers. All this working class people, they don't own enough assets. Every decade, assets become more valuable than labor. It'd be great to own a McDonald's once they're fully automated, but you're not going to get there. The boomers own the vast majority of the wealth in this country. The distribution is getting completely out of hand, and it's getting ridiculous. I say this as a business owner and a capitalist, that the distribution of ownership is completely whack, and we have to start going the other direction. People don't want to work if they feel like they don't own anything. If you're just paying rent, $1,200 a month to some landlord, who cares about upgrading your rental? Why are you going to work harder? So you can put a pool in your backyard? No. So you can buy a boat? No, you can't park it anywhere. You don't have any land. So you can pay a landscaper? No, you don't have to pay for that. Like, when you don't own anything, you don't have anything to take care of. You don't have anything to aspire to do. You don't need to refinish your basement if there's no basement that you have. So why work hard? There's nothing to improve. There's nothing to take care of. There's no family. Why work hard? Again, why would you build a nest if you have no eggs to put in it?
U.S. has been experiencing a severe shortage in labor, still missing 1.7 million Americans from the workforce compared to February 2020. The McKinsey Global Institute estimates that U.S. GDP could have been $296 to $442 billion higher in 2023 if the country had been able to fill its job vacancies. However, some experts suggest the impacts of men leaving or never entering the workforce could be more sector-specific.
You need young men coming in wanting to replace those people going out. And so if men have primarily been in more manual labor, more blue-skilled and skilled trades, if they're older and they're leaving into retirement and there's not as many young men coming in, both because of declining cohort sizes, but moving in a different direction type of careers, we're going to be losing that sector of productivity.
Instead of training our workforce, they're just going to send all these jobs overseas. And the ones that have to be done here locally, like construction, they're just going to import that labor. That's the plan. Not only is that the plan, that's what's happening.
Rise in federal funding, the infrastructure sector hasn't been able to find enough workers. with the construction workforce shortage surpassing 500,000 in 2024.
We are a little concerned about the impact that inflation is going to have and has had on the movement of infrastructure dollars into the actual productive activity. Having a shortage of men in construction is going to raise a problem.
I own a business that's in blue collar and I have several employees. And I talk to other business owners and I hear the complaints about their staff. And the biggest issue I see, especially in the construction trades, is the lack of training. There's the whole new guy cliche where they just make fun of the new guy or look, he's doing it wrong. You should be training your staff to be nice to the new guy, to help the new guy, to not just make fun of him and make him feel like an outsider. Nobody wants to be that idiot that's on a work site. But when you go to a new job, and this is like, let's say you're doing roofing, like, why are you not training this person to be really good at what they do? They're brand new, remember. And a lot of times this is their first or second job or first time being out on the workforce. And so, yeah, they don't have a ton of like people skills and they don't have like a huge work ethic. Those things have to be built into them. It's not everybody's parent trains their kid to have good work ethic. It has to be done on the job. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to do that. And so then they complain when there's not enough workers working at their companies. Well, yeah, you didn't train them up. So yes, this is a failure with government, but this is also a failure of local small companies and construction crews and people just not being good teams. Yeah, there's good teams, of course, but I can guarantee you in the comments, I can guarantee you there's people who have started at jobs and were laughed at or made fun of or not appreciated. Of course, they're not going to move up the ladder and become better at their job and make a career out of it. If their first week on the job, they're just getting made fun of and being teased.
The trend could have a dire socio-political impact as well.
It'll get worse in ways that we would not like. I mean, I think it would lead to more premature deaths, but it will also likely lead to radicalization and polarization because this is a frustrated, left-behind group with no options.
There are problems that government can address and problems that government can't address.
So one of the first functions that beats out policy is, economic growth. You have a strong economy, you're going to have increased wage structure, and it's going to bring people back into the market.
More than a quarter of prime-age men not looking for work cited insufficient pay as a reason preventing them from work. And nearly half said competitive pay, salary, compensation, and/or bonuses was a very important factor when considering whether to enter or return to the workforce.
For the young, better training, skills training, some form of post-high school education, encouraging that, maybe even subsidizing that. I think part of the youth mental health crisis has to do with what's next. What's AI going to do? What am I going to do? Are there any stable jobs? I can't afford college. All those questions all come together. And so models that help them kind of give them a jump start can be really effective ways of.
Whatever you're doing, don't worry about the AI. It's not going to help you to just freeze up and do nothing. Either AI will make you better at your job or it'll take your job. You're going to have to act as if it's going to make you better at your job. Otherwise, you have a 0% chance of getting the job.
In a reading. There are actually now really promising programs in high schools which teach kids financial literacy. They teach them about equitable entrepreneurship. They teach them about how do you foster better mental health as part of the workplace. And it seems to inspire kids to go on to college, right? Because they sort of see a pathway where they didn't see it before.
29% of men out of the labor force said that training and educational programs was another important factor in considering a return to the workforce.
Having the type of commitment from the employer to train and retain and offer upward mobility for workers, I think will be very important. Trying to figure out more about career pathways in the labor market and not just the education side. So how is it that someone moves from first job, next job to best job? How do we help people understand and navigate?
Nearly a quarter of working Americans said they weren't satisfied with their growth opportunities in the workplace, compared to other OECD countries that on average spend 0.1% of their GDP on training their workers. The US spent only 0.03% of their GDP on job training in 2022.
Older age groups, it's tougher. You know, you're probably not going to get these guys to retrain, but you can get, there are a lot of programs that have largely been pioneered in the UK, much more than here, but we're starting to pick up on them, that literally just try and reboot community activities. They get these isolated people in despair out of their houses. It can make a difference.
We know religion created community. Do you know how many people got jobs from people at their church when they lost their job? You lost your job? Well, my brother is hiring. You should come work for his company. This is why Utah is so good for business, because every week, everybody gets together in church and they talk. They meet each other. They sell each other things. Come to my party where I sell you some Tupperware. Or, hey, my work is hiring. We're an HVAC company. This is what a community is for. This is the benefit of community. This is the benefit of religion. I'm sorry, atheists, we just don't get together unless it's in a forum on Reddit complaining about stuff that doesn't matter.
Social programs like disability benefits spark contentious debate.
It's very controversial. People have very strong opinions about this. While we don't know why it is happening, we can be pretty clear that the social welfare programs are helping, and the disability programs are helping to finance this situation in a way that was never originally intended.
A 2018 analysis by the Joint Economic Committee found that 64% of prime-age men who aren't working were receiving some sort of government assistance.
So the one benefit that they rely heavily on is disability insurance. One, because they often are unable to work if they have a physical injury or high levels of addiction or whatever. But
so high levels of addiction is a disability. Hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Well, congratulations. We are testing this theory now because we are in hard times. So hopefully we're in the middle of creating a lot of strong men.
It also provides health insurance, which is huge.
Very much against the initial intentions of the founders of the program. They've ended up with a perverse situation that too often subsidizes or even incentivizes helplessness and long-term dependence. If we thought about a system in which we had a work-first principle where the incentives were for getting the training and then showing up at the job and then staying at the job, I think we'd be in a lot better place than we are today.
Yeah, this is absolutely crazy. Why is work not a requirement in order to receive assistance? Even just a little work, it's mad to me.
However, some experts remain doubtful about whether altering the benefits program will lead to meaningful results.
I think until we deal with the deeper...
I mean, who cares if it does lead to different results? It's the ethics behind it. Let's say everything stays the same, but there's a few more men working because they're required to. Can you measure the morals in that? Is that something you can put on a chart? Who cares? It's the right thing to do.
Problem of ill health, ill mental health. These guys aren't going to respond to incentives.
Everybody is responsible for their brothers. Everybody's responsible for their neighbors and their friends. And we ourselves as citizens can help to shine a spotlight on this. It shouldn't be America's invisible problem. And the more that we talk about it, the more that we pay attention to it, the closer we get to turning this around.
I'd like to hear what you think. And if you disagree with anything that I said, that's cool. I'm totally fine with that. Go ahead, let me know what your thoughts are. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm right. It's all good. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.